Oh, you want to be an it girl?
Welcome, Shira, to the podcast.
Yay.
I'm so excited to have you here. So you are a therapist, a practicing therapist. You have your master's from USC, and you're currently pursuing your PhD from Pacifica.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot. So thank you for taking the time to be here. I literally don't know how you have time to do anything on some level. So I want to jump in right off the bat and say, we kind of all think about self-criticism. I think we have an idea of what self-criticism is. Do you think it's a talked about idea of what self-criticism truly is, though?
That's a good question. I think people know what self-criticism is, but maybe not examples of exactly what it sounds like.
And does it sound different from person to person?
It can, yeah. It can sound different from person to person. Everyone has their own voice inside their head, so it can sound a little bit different. But there are also underlined statements that kind of manifest into what the feeling is, like, I'm not good enough. Mm-hmm. That can turn into all types of different language. That can sound a bunch of different ways. I'm not worthy, or I suck at this, or I'm not as good as everyone else, or they're better than me. Like, those all come from I'm not good enough.
Right. They stem from a place, but like whatever lingo you may use may be different. And that's why I think when someone said something to that effect to me, I was like, no, like, I don't not think I'm not good enough. I just think like I'm not good at that. And then I was like, oh, wait, those actually are related. And it's like funny how you don't make the connection that those do really come from the same place. It's a little tricky.
Totally. When it's to ourselves, it doesn't seem as critical as it does if you said it out loud to somebody else.
Right.
And that's the test. That's how you know that's how you know you're criticizing yourself, when you say something, when you ask yourself, would I say that to a friend? Mm-hmm. That's how you know. And if you wouldn't, then you shouldn't say it to yourself.
But we do all the time.
We do. Yes.
And where does self-criticism come from? And like, I know it's kind of different from person to person, but why do we develop this way of thinking?
There's a lot of reasons that we develop it. Some of it comes from when we're a child, trauma, feeling not good enough, feeling unworthy, maybe having a lack of trust in our caregivers, and then not trusting anyone but ourselves, and then we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, then we criticize ourselves and we don't do things right, so it could be that. Another thing is society. Society puts a lot of weight on success.
Yeah,
the American dream.
Dive into that one, because I also think that's kind of like the wannabe it girl dream too, is that you see this world of success plastered on social media, highlighted in TV, and you assume that's like, to be it, you have to have that too. So there's these crazy societal pressures that sit around you when you're chasing your dreams or ambitions and whatnot.
Totally. Yeah. It's all about success. It's about making money. It's about looking a certain way. Mm-hmm. It's about having a certain amount of friends.
Or followers.
Or likes. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes about the external validation rather than the internal. And if you're not getting the external, then you're putting this pressure on yourself to get something from the outside. And then you lose yourself in that. And you get mad at yourself for not being that.
Right. So you've set this really, not maybe unrealistic, but this high level of expectation. And then when you don't achieve it is when self-criticism starts to like seep in. Yes.
So that's perfectionism. Perfectionism is setting unrealistic standards for yourself.
Well, and it's so interesting because also I think that, and I've talked about this a little bit in a different episode, that, you know, perfectionism, we're told, is like a good thing. Like on some level, they're like, oh, perfectionism means you get so much done. Perfectionism means you're a high achiever, but like, it's actually like not quite as glamorous as that sounds.
Totally. Actually, being a perfectionist is impossible. So it's impossible to do things in a way that's perfect. So instead of being a winner, you're actually always a loser. So being a perfectionist is challenging because you're not ever going to be that. So you're always falling short, and that hurts.
So how do you get to a space of identifying that you are living in self-criticism mindset, and then how do you upgrade your thinking there? Like how do you start to tackle like this issue you might have developed?
So my way is to really hone in on, make an intention out of, if I wouldn't say it to a friend, then I don't want to be saying it to myself. So that's how to test it. Because otherwise it can seem okay. Like, I'm not that good at this thing. Well, you wouldn't really say that to your friend. You're not really that good at that.
A mean friend would, but we don't talk about that.
Yeah. A friend that you care about and believe in. Right. We're talking about a friend that you really you care about, you see it in them.
Right.
You know? You wouldn't talk to them like that. If they were going out to meet a guy or a girl or whoever,
right.
You would hype them up and be like, you got this. You're great. You're beautiful. You're strong. You have the whole thing. You go talk to them. You got it.
Right.
You know, you wouldn't be like, well, what if you say the wrong thing, or what if they don't like you, or what if they're in a relationship?
Or right.
You'd be like, you got it, just go.
The baggage of that, because also I feel like we'll use the dating example. I love the dating example. Like, you're going out on a date and you're like, oh, it never works out. And if you're saying that to yourself, you would not give that. I would never give that advice to a friend. I'd never say like, oh, love just never works out for you. Like,
totally.
But that's like kind of where the rhetoric. And that's tricky because self-criticism, like when we say that term, can sound kind of clinical, but it's really so much very common lingo.
It sounds so normal in the head. It could be even that you've traditionally not been good at something, at art, for instance, and you go to a workshop with your friends and it's art related and you're like, oh, well, I'm not good at art. I have never been good at art.
So I'm not going to be good at it.
Yeah, this isn't really my thing. That's even a form of self-criticism. You're just limiting. It's limiting thoughts. Just thoughts that limit you, even if they were true in the past. So instead, with my clients, what I'll do is I'll say, okay, well, before that wasn't really your thing, but now it can be.
Ooh, boy. I might be unpacking some personal trauma into this. But like what? So let's go, if there was a time that you weren't good at it and you're in that same situation again, or facing a similar situation, but you remember that time very strongly and it sticks with you. How do you not carry the baggage of that time into the next?
Okay, so I'm a former gymnast. I was a rhythmic gymnast. I was 14th in the United States. And I was, it came to a point where I skipped a level from level 7 to level 9. And then things got really, really intense. And
Isn't that like a big jump?
It's a big jump. It doesn't happen very often. And
okay.
Yeah, it was a big jump.
Pressure's high.
A big pressure shift. And I felt unworthy at my first competition as a level 9. And level 9 and 10 go hand in hand. So it really went from like, kind of in the middle to way at the top. And I felt unworthy of being there. And because of that, I didn't perform well at all. It was just a disaster. My first competition, disaster. Every mistake that one could make, just embarrassing mistakes. And it became a theme. I started to perform really poorly over and over and over and over until I got a coach, actually, a sports psychologist that I worked with. And he helped me see my value. And he shifted the way I talked about myself, even the way I said my name. When I shook his hand, he would say your name. And I'd say, my name is Shira Hefter. He said, no, your name is Shira Hefter. And he would have me lean in when I said Hefter. Shira Hefter. And he'd have me do it over and over. And I was so embarrassed. I was a little kid.
How old are you?
I was 13.
Oh my God, yeah.
13, 14 at the time. And then I would do some visualizations and I would really see my goals and see it happening for myself. But it was really the thoughts that took me down. Mm-hmm. And I even noticed it now. So now I'm dancing. This is 15 years later. I'm 30 and I'm dancing and I mess up in class when I go out to perform and there's a camera in front of me and I mess up. And then I felt really bad about it afterwards. And I felt like the same kind of thing, like, oh, I'm just kind of the person that messes up when they perform. I felt like everyone thought that I was the person that messes up. And then another friend comes over and she messed up too. And she was like, I was crushing it. I was crushing the choreo. And then I just didn't do it. If it came down to it, I didn't do it. And I'm so mad at myself. She literally said, I hate myself. And I said, I think the way that we actually overcome this is that we don't hate ourselves when we mess up.
Yeah.
Is that we really love ourselves. And I was like, we did it. We messed up. Yes. And we like high-fived her. I gave her a big hug. I'm like, we messed up. This is awesome. Because if you feel shame when you mess up, then the next time rolls around, it's the next time to perform. You felt shame. You shamed yourself the last time. Now the pressure's on even higher.
It's so hard. I like literally am having a physical reaction to that because it's like, it's so, and I think you're so smart to have that like right after reaction because like you're healing and dealing with it in the moment instead of like carrying that weight that whole extended amount of time. You just want to squash that feeling right away with like, I messed up and it was great and look at me now. Like, who cares? So like now when situations like that might linger for you, say you had a bad experience in dance class and you didn't do that. What are some tactics we could do if we can't heal it in the instant moment?
I would say, the feelings of I did bad and why did I do that? Those types of things will enter your head. Yes. And then it's really just saying, no, it's okay. It's like giving yourself a hug or celebrate in some way. Go get a massage, go do something nice for yourself because you got to reward the failures. If you can reward the failures, then they won't seem so big and then you feel free to go out and try again. Yeah. So in some way, reward the failure and just say, I got it, I showed up. For me, I've been really focused on just showing up, just coming to the thing, just being there.
Yeah, one of my best friends from college used to always say, when we were both dance auditioning like a lot, she'd say, you have to remember that showing up, you already have like beat yourself by not going. Like you are already way one step ahead because like everyone else who stayed home and was too scared, like you showed up and you could have been the person who stayed home and not shown up too. So like being there alone is like such a triumph. And like, I think showing up for yourself and pushing yourself, I always say this, beyond like your comfort zone or like in your zone will start to build your self-worth and start to build also like the confidence of the situation. You're like, oh no, I did go to that audition. Yeah, I did go to that scary job or I did go to that networking event even though I went without friends or whatnot. And I think that will start to directly affect your confidence.
Yeah. Force yourself to compliment yourself for the things that you appreciate about what you did versus harping on the things that didn't go your way, weren't expected, didn't feel so good. Because we all have those. But if you can teach your brain to notice the good in you, just like you would do with a friend, but not needing the friend to do it for you, doing it for yourself, then you can trust yourself. When you need the other person to give you validation and tell you, no, it's okay, it's okay. Sometimes that's okay, Friends are great. We need those.
You need friends too. Yeah.
We need them. But to do it for yourself, that is confidence. That is self-assurance.
Oh, I'm like, I'm mind blown by that because I don't think I've ever really realized validating yourself will give you the most trust in yourself. And then you start to care a lot less about the opinions of others or, the external validation of it. Because I think self-criticism also has a lot to do with, at least it was for me, and like I can easily slip back into this mindset, please don't even think I'm above it, that I would be in dance and think everyone around the room is thinking I'm so bad or like, why is she even still doing this? Or like, she doesn't got this. And then I like made that like evidence real. And like, I have no idea if people were actually saying that. It's interesting how we think self-criticism starts with other people's view, but really it's just your own view. Do you find that to be true? Or?
Yeah, that's such a great example. It's the stories that we make up about ourselves. There's so many stories. And it's just being like, oh, that's a story.
Yeah.
That's a story. I had the same type of story. I felt like everyone in class felt like I was someone that messed up a lot. And I rewatched the video, and there were a couple little things, but like it looked good. So, but in the moment, it was like everyone thinks I'm someone that messes up a lot, and that came from my past, and I was someone that messed up a lot for a bit. But that was a story, and then it's saying, you know, that's a story. You just made that up.
But it's a story, and things also clearly change. Like maybe once upon a time, I did really mess up, and I shouldn't have been in that level or XYZ, but like things change. You grow too. So like, why would we carry old stories with us? But we do.
Oh yeah, we totally do.
How do we start like writing new stories for ourselves in these situations?
Well, one is celebrating yourself, is really noticing the stories. Noticing, oh, that's a story. Like in dating, it comes up a lot. Like you think the person is thinking all this stuff about you.
It's not. There's no way to know that.
Yeah, you have to ask them, is this how you feel? Because it's assumptions. Noticing when you're making an assumption.
And what do you tell yourself when you're making the assumptions?
That's an assumption. Or here are the other possibilities also that it could be. There's other possibilities that maybe some people think I'm someone that messes up a lot. So that's a possibility. There's a possibility that people think I'm amazing. It's a possibility that people think people haven't noticed me. And there's like so many different possibilities. Right. And the one that I'm thinking is everyone in this room, her, all right now are thinking about me over here, even though there's so many people in class and they're all thinking that I'm someone that messes up a lot. But that is just a story. And when you think about that a lot, it really manifests into so many other things. So really just saying, oh, that's a story.
Yeah, I like the example too of let's open up the options. First of all, everybody is not thinking about you. Like they're thinking about themselves.
100%.
First and foremost. So like no matter how ridiculous you feel or how badly you feel you did at that job or whatever, like everyone's like more like, well, did I mess up in my role? Like, so take one, because I feel like that is like 70% of it. Like, is that you are like not as important as you think you are.
Yes.
And like, so take the pressure down too, and like look at the fan of options. Not everybody's having the same thought. So why would you also have just one singular thought about how you're doing? I want to go to kind of like the idea that self-criticism can be positive. Like some people, I mean, myself included, think like that will really push you to the next level. How do you move that more into a healthy place? Like kind of find the balance of, you know, I don't want to be too easy on myself and everything I do is totally fine and okay. And then also, how do you not be too harsh on yourself? It's hard.
It is hard. I think, yeah, sometimes in the moment saying, oh, like, I've been so lazy all day. I have to go do something now. I have to go do something. I've been so lazy. Now I need to go really work, you know? That can work. Something like that can work. But it's a short period of time. Because the more that you call yourself lazy, the more then you'll end up being lazy and feeling shame about it. When you feel shame equals I am a bad person. That's the
blanket connection.
Thank you.
It's kind of like how I'm not good enough has all these different versions. Shame is, wait, what did you say it was?
Shame is I'm a bad person.
I'm a bad person is the same as like the same blanket for like all these negative trains of thoughts.
Right. Guilt is a thought pattern and it's I did something bad. But shame is I'm a bad person. And so when you feel like you're a bad person for doing something, you don't actually learn from it. You put more pressure on yourself for doing it, and then you don't want to do it. And when you do, when you are lazy, then you're bad.
Yeah.
So it can work in short spurts to criticize yourself. It can work at sometimes, but then over the course of life, it actually kind of weighs on you. So it's really about switching the internal lingo to I was resting. Instead of I'm lazy, I was resting. And now I feel like I have enough energy to actually, let's go hard now.
And
I rested, let's go. Let's go.
Right. I love that. I've recently learned that too, is like if I take hard time off, it's not because I'm lazy. It's because I can't do those things well right now. So like I'm going to take that time and then, right, let's go. Let's go back in and do things really hard and do them really well. I don't know if this would equate, but do you think confidence is to shame? Are they the opposites of each other?
I think pride would be the opposite of shame. Like being proud of what you're doing. Like really.
Do you think pride has a negative connotation though?
There's two different types of pride. Like
It can.
Okay, so if we're saying pride is okay, so maybe if it's not confidence is to shame, maybe it's pride is to shame. And like there's kind of two versions of pride, I guess, like the boastful, like look at me, and then there's like the true, like, no, I'm just proud of the things. Like, how do we kind of connect the dots from one place to another? Because I think a lot of people, myself and very much included, is when I have felt shame, the only thing I dreamed of on some level was to not feel that way, to feel more like I've accomplished more, I've done more. I was going to say, you kind of think if I'm just have this, then like all these other issues will go away. And that's not really true. It's the feeling in between that I think does more for you. Do you know what I mean? Or am I not making any sense?
The feeling in between shame and confidence.
Right. And it's like that will stay with you forever versus getting a raise or booking the job will only be fleeting, but like the feeling will stay there. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It's the kind of hyping yourself up from the shame. That's a really cool practice.
And that will stay with you forever.
Yeah. As a therapist, because I do this so much, I notice when I'm criticizing so quickly that I start to hype myself up pretty quickly now. And I'll say, it's okay. Sometimes I say, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And that really calms me down. Or I'll be like, you're beautiful. Like in my head, I'm like, yeah, like, you're beautiful. You got this. You can do this. It's okay. You're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to feel like you're making a mistake, but you're actually growing. You got this. You're beautiful and you're smart. You say that to yourself. And it's a really cool practice.
And you just say that in your head to yourself.
I say it in my head and I say it out loud.
If you have the space, you just say it.
I do. I say it. I said it before I danced yesterday out loud. We were facing back to start, and I was like, you got this, you got this, you got this, out loud. Nobody could hear his music on, but even if they could, great.
Who cares?
But yeah, it helps. It helps to hear it.
I think there's also, because I'm with somebody who was, and maybe am still a little, like sometimes resistant saying affirmations or something out loud because I'm like, oh, it's so silly. But then like, do it once and then be like, oh, okay, whatever. Do it twice. You're like, oh, okay, wait, whoa. Do it, but like do it consistently for like a month. Like it starts to even feel less ridiculous because you've done it. It's a practice.
It's totally a practice. It really impacts you to say things out loud about yourself that are good. It really impacts you because our unconscious comes from our stories that come in our mind. The things that we hear most end up becoming the sources that influence us. Like if we're saying, I'm not worthy, or, oh, comparing to other people and not feeling good enough, that really starts to become part of your core and in your unconscious. That creates your behavior where you don't even know it does. Your unconscious is just, it's what repeats the most, becomes part of your unconscious. So if you can start repeating things that are good about you, that are confident, that are, the things that are good about you, then that will start to rule over all the other stuff. And you'll be able to come back to that and believe that it's true.
Right, because you've built it up. It's like a muscle. You have to work them out. And if you don't, then like, why would you expect those muscles to be strong at all?
Yeah, your mind it's a total muscle.
love
it takes risk and takes pushing against the stories and not believing all the things that you think.
And well, so I want to ask you, when dealing with clients or like even if yourself, do people come in with stories that like they don't really have a lot of evidence for, and they're like, oh, but everyone thinks this, and like, I really don't think anyone else thinks this, but you have tattooed that on your arm that that's part of your narrative. How do you tell a client to peel that back and realize it doesn't come from someone else, it came from them?
If somebody's feeling this strong narrative and they're an adult, I would ask them, like, who in you believes that? Like, what age are they? Are they 6? Whose voice is that says everyone feels that way about them, or this narrative? Whose voice is that? Is it your voice? Is it your mom's voice? Your dad's voice? And then I would allow them to feel the feelings. Like, and tell that, it's probably the inner child. Tell that inner child, like, you're allowed to feel that. I'll take care of you. Then it's, then it doesn't have so much weight. It starts to melt a bit, to give even it some permission to be there.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. 'Cause I do think if you start to identify who, it likely you, but like at what stage and what made that voice in you get triggered off. I think just even knowing its initiation point, you start to like realize like, oh no, that's just me. And like, I used to just think that, or that's in the past. And you realize it's not so forward facing all the time.
Well, it's a limiting belief that someone can really build their life around. And it becomes part of their identity. And that limit becomes safe. It becomes safe to think that. Like, if someone believes, everyone doesn't like me, eventually, like, that's hurtful. That's a hurtful life to live. But eventually it becomes safe to live like that because they've known it. Like, I work with people that have chronic pain that's actually caused psychologically. A bunch of the illnesses that we have, headaches, IBS, even like UTI symptoms can be come from the brain, come from the stress that we put on ourselves. People that have chronic pain, when we start to get them out of pain, because there's ways to get into the body and actually remove the pain. So I'll do that with them, these different somatic exercises. But a lot of times what stops them from fully getting over the pain for a bit is the identity of living life with pain, with this pain. They've lived their life around it. It's dictated how they've done things. So now it's like they're living a new life. How do they live that new life with all this freedom? It's almost scary.
Oh, it's terrifying because that's become very comfortable.
Yeah, it's almost the pain becomes comfortable because it's so known and familiar. And then not having pain is unfamiliar. So the limiting beliefs we have sometimes keep us safe. Depression can keep us safe. It keep us safe under the bed, under the covers in bed, or
right.
Keep us from being social, or keep us, somehow that becomes safe.
Right. And also I think saying, oh, well, I'm not confident, I can't do that, will keep you safe from ever trying. Why do you think it's important to experience confidence?
It shows us that we're worthy. And we are. We all are. Which is a confusing concept to people because everyone likes comparing and being on some kind of scale of who's better, who's worse, who deserves it more, who doesn't, and trying to figure out where they are on that scale.
We love social constructs. Society does. And they set it up for us even more and more. Like, the Instagram followers is the number one. Like, I think that just like sets that up. There's an episode of Black Mirror. I don't know if have you seen Black Mirror?
I've seen it, but
I'm gonna force you to watch this one. It's not that dark, but it's about this girl, and she is living in a world where you can't rent a car unless you have like X amount of followers, or like you can't eat at that cafe unless you have X amount of followers. But like, it already, I mean, not to call it out, but like we already do it with like influencer parties. So Shira, how can we learn to embrace and accept our imperfections and limitations, even when this culture will continue to have us compare them?
Compare them to one another?
Yeah.
I really believe it's about putting positive energy out. I really believe that when you put positive energy out, you get it back. And it's really hard to do that when you're trying to compete with people. But I think when you cheer someone on and they're good at something, it actually is good for you to be around that. So I say we just cheer everyone on. We cheer everyone on and we cheer ourselves on. And we're just really positive in how we approach that. Instead of needing someone to do not as good so that we can feel good, we really cheer people on. And for me, that's a practice because I come from a very competitive background. But I see how much better it feels when I'm not needing someone else to not do as well as I do to make me feel good. That is toxic, to need someone to do worse than you for you to feel good. It's toxic to be on that scale. So I say in this world with the systems, we really support one another and we really support ourselves in the experience. It's hard for everybody.
Shira, you come from such a competitive background, but you are such an open and like confident and supportive person. For somebody who maybe like wants to get there, what was your journey like of how you grew this way of being so confident but also supportive?
Well, I went through a lot in this competitive gymnastics world and went through a lot of bullying, and it was a pretty abusive sport, and it really hurt a lot. And it took me a long time to find my friends in life and to find the people that really spoke to me. It took a lot of years. It's really more on the recent side. And it really came from working on myself, trying to learn how to love myself, doing yoga. I really put myself in situations where the people in those situations were good people. And it really helped me learn about myself. I had some big breakdowns on the way, some big crying breakdowns where I felt exhausted from people pleasing everyone around me but myself. And in those moments, realized I needed to do something for me. So I did some, I went to a Kyle Cease event. He's a transformational speaker. He's really amazing. And I started really focusing on myself and really kind of going with the idea that your vibe attracts your tribe. And that's what I was talking about earlier. When you really support other people and you're encouraging to them and you're encouraging to yourself, it really uplifts you. And then the people that you're surrounded by and the things, the opportunities that come to you, they come because you have an energy. So I feel like when you work on that energy of being love and light and focusing on the things that really lift you up and the things that you love, you attract opportunities and people into your life that are really good. If you focus on the negative stuff about you and judge other people, you start to lower your vibration and you kind of attract that kind of energy. So I would say you work on your own energy. Do some kind of physical activity, do some kind of like mental health therapy of some capacity, or work on affirmations or reading, going on walks, enjoying nature, and really just forcing your brain to say nice things about yourself during the hard times.
Speaking of therapists, you are a therapist. Can you please tell everybody where they can find you or if they want to work with you?
Yeah. So my website is therapybyshira.com. Shira is Shira. And my Instagram is Shira_listens. So you can find me there as well. I specialize in mind-body work, so I really work with the feelings in our bodies that are really our inner child or trying to speak to us. And when we can work on that, it's so much easier to make decisions because we're aware of our intuition and our body. So I work on that. I work with athletes and performers, as we talked about with dance and gymnastics. And I also see men and women dealing with a variety of issues, anxiety, depression, life changes, all of that, self-love.
We love it. Shira, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I love you so much.
So, you want to be an it girl?